Is Sunday's matchup with the Cleveland Browns a must-win game for the Philadelphia Eagles at 2-2? We'll get into it on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to a Tuesday edition of the show. Louis DiBiase, joined as always by Gino Camilleri. We're brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use our code in all capital letters, Locked On NFL, for $20 off your first purchase. Getting you ready for Eagles-Browns this Sunday. The Eagles coming off a bye week at 2-2, and Gino, there's a lot of pressure on this football team, and I don't think that's bold to say at 2-2. If they lose to the Browns, they would be under 500. If I'm not mistaken, at 2-3, this will be the first time since 2021 that they're under 500 in the regular season. Like, this is, again, and that doesn't mean the season's over if they lose, but considering how fragile the situation is right now, I don't know, is it bold to say this is a must-win game? It kind of feels like it at home.
I think before today, I would have said no.
Yeah.
But after seeing what transpired with the New York Jets letting go of Robert Saleh,
yeah,
the NFL, it's a week-to-week league, my friend. That's just about what we know. And you're talking about, to contextualize this game, a Cleveland Browns team, which is not good. And I think you put it perfectly on Twitter today. Deshaun Watson is somebody who holds onto the ball way too long. He is not working within the offense. Kevin Stefanski cannot even revitalize this guy at this point. It is a nightmare scenario for them. So if the Eagles were to lose this game in a fashion that's very similar to the last couple games that you had played, and those wrongs of all of the Atlanta miscues and the early Saints miscues and the Tampa miscues, if those continue on against the Browns, who, it's a wounded duck at this point. Let's be honest. Like, let's call a spade a spade. Nick Sirianni, would he be escorted out of NovaCare the next day, man? Like, that's a tough situation, dude. Like, it at home, he's never lost coming off of the bye. If the team does not come out ready to go, dude, it's going to be pretty tough to say something else to that locker room, to Jeffrey Lurie, to Howie Roseman, to want to keep him in the building.
I personally would see him the door, and I personally would show Vic Fangio the door as well. If they allow this dead-in-the-water quarterback, who, by the way, like, Cleveland, this is going to go down as the most embarrassing, disgraceful move in NFL history that proves that karma is real, right? And Deshaun Watson, by the way, thank God the Eagles are not in this situation, and a lot of it is by luck if the reports are right from 2022 that the Eagles were interested in Watson. I mean, it really, the Browns' problems, Gino, put the Eagles' problems in perspective, right? I would say that for sure. It makes it seem a lot less serious. But if they let Deshaun Watson come in, like, this is, like you said, he holds onto the football longer than anybody. He is by far right now, when it comes to ball placement and pretty much every metric, like the least accurate quarterback in the entire NFL. If they show this guy the respect of like an elite quarterback, where they're playing 15, 20 yards off the ball, regardless of the situation, if they're letting him get the ball out quick, making big plays, I mean, he is a shell. It's an understatement to say he's a shell of who he used to be in Houston. If he comes in and lights up this defense, I'm sorry. Like, that is all she wrote for me personally. I cannot sit there and watch Deshaun Watson. I'm going to be in that building on Sunday. I cannot watch him.
I forgot you're going to be there.
Yeah,
man.
Pick that defense apart. And if the pass rush doesn't get there, they're not dialing up pressure, that's going to be a problem. Because, Gino, if you've watched any Cleveland Browns football this year, Deshaun Watson's the worst quarterback in the NFL right now.
Oh,
I've seen. That's an understatement.
I've seen it, man, and it's bad when people are calling for Jameis Winston to get the start. And I mean, Jeff over at Locked On Browns, man, I feel bad for him. Like, he's going through it right now. It's insanity. Like, we've been there before, Lou. The end of the Carson Wentz regime. It's like, this is a shell of this former person, but this is a completely different scenario. And I fully believe that Deshaun Watson deserves everything that's coming his way.
Yeah.
But here's another one for you, Lou. let's say the Browns make the smart move and hand the ball to Jameis Winston, and Jameis Winston comes in here and lights up this defense. I would not want to be on any Philly sports radio host a podcast the next day, but we're going to have to make sense of a situation that seemed incomprehensible a couple weeks ago. But on the positive, Nick Sirianni in these moments after the bye has been very good.
Yeah.
This is his this is the Lou. This is the Alamo. This is the last stand, in my opinion. Like, if they come out there and it is 3 straight drives of 3 and out, Jalen Hurts doesn't look ready to go. The defensive line can't get pressure, like you said. Vic Fangio's doing the same old things that have been driving us crazy. Kellen Moore is throwing targets to Paris Campbell for some reason. You are not going to find a fan in me or Lou DiBiase to defend that outcome.
And I know I'm saying it in a negative tone. I'm not saying I'm expecting Deshaun Watson to come in on Sunday and light up the Eagles and Jalen Hurts to not have success with A.J. Brown back, as you talked about yesterday.
No, I think they bounce back too.
Yeah, Saquon. Yeah. It's a negative tone because I'm nervous that could happen, and I'm almost like warning the team.
We've seen it. We've seen it before. That's
what I'm scared about, and I'm almost like warning them. Like, if they suffer that fate, this podcast is going to be dreadful all week.
Yes,
week.
man.
Like, they need to avoid that, and it's such an important game because, like I said, this team has not been, even last year, like, all things considered, at the end, week after week, you could keep saying, like, hey, I know they keep losing, but they're still at 10, 11 wins. The playoffs are still all clinched up. You still have a shot at everything that you want to do. But at 2 and 3, it's a completely different story. You don't have a 9-10 win cushion that you had last year. And you haven't been under 500 in 2-3 years at this point. And you have some tough games still on the schedule. So I think this is a really important game coming off the bye week at home against a reeling football team with all of your stars back. There really are just no excuses. Like, I don't know how you paint it up. I know the Browns have talent. Like, this isn't going to be a cakewalk where you win 30-3. That defense that Jim Schwartz has a lot of talent on all 3 levels. But it doesn't matter. There's no excuse for the Eagles to not win this football game.
And those things that we've talked about in the areas like getting the offense in a position via a turnover that might provide you with a short field. This is the game to do that.
With Winston or Watson, Gino, both have a knack for turning over. Deshaun Watson this year, as I threw up on the graphic, 5 fumbles and 3 interceptions. He has 8 turnovers. Like, he does give the other team the football.
The only guy worse than our quarterback at this current point in time turning the ball over, which is tough to utter. Like, it's a tough thing to say out loud. But at the same time, if these guys know what is at stake in these next 4 games or so, Lou, and according to ESPN's power ranking metric, the Eagles have the 4th easiest remaining strength of schedule along the way. This is where it starts. You remember that run in 2017 where they were knocking out teams like San Francisco, Denver. They beat up Chicago. They need to get into a rhythm now. Cleveland, Giants, Cincinnati, and you have the potential to maybe get Doug Peterson fired in that game.
Yeah, which I don't want to do. But I want to win the game. I hope Jacksonville wins the next few so he doesn't get canned. And the Eagles still win. But yeah, no, you're 100% correct. And I just think this game, like, the Cleveland Browns haven't scored over 20 points in a single game yet.
Could you imagine they score 35 points?
But that's what I'm saying. And I think everybody's nervous about that. And hopefully they can just silence these nerves. Like, you shouldn't feel this nervous about a team this talented, but that's where we're at because they just come out sleepwalking. If they come out of
How can we trust them? How can we trust them at this point?
It's going to be so discouraging if they come out of a bye week this healthy and just lay an egg again in the first quarter. Like, the first quarter of this game is so freaking crucial. Like, you need to come out the first few drives and score points, score touchdowns, get turnovers. Like, come out guns a-blazing for once in a game, like, from the start. Punch somebody in the mouth. I just can't remember the last time this football team did that.
It's been, I mean,
remember
you're
after
talking
bye
about
weeks
going
with
to
Andy
Arizona.
Reid? Like, after a bye week with Andy Reid, it was just like, I mean, bombs falling from the sky with how ready this football team was.
Yeah, it was the best coaching game plan after that bye week. The analogy became you don't want to play Andy Reid on 2 weeks rest because
like,
he was better than anybody, and you need to get that with
after
Nick.
A bye week of all. Like, if they come out slow out of a bye week, that is so indicative of this coaching staff. Like it'll be like people have been annoyed that we've been talking so much about coaching over execution with personnel, but especially if they're slow to start this game after a bye against this football team, like give me a break.
To end this portion on a positive note, bringing all of those guys back, as I mentioned on yesterday's show, like I can't see AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts, Saquon, those guys who were so prideful on offense, come out and lay in it. Like it doesn't click in my head that that's going to happen. And I think at some point reality has to meet the expectation. Maybe it's now. Maybe it's right now. Like let's speak it into existence. Maybe they come out, they score multiple drives in a row. They score the first, second, third drive, and they're at least getting points. They're causing turnovers, and then we could feel good about the situation moving forward because the easiest remaining schedule moving forward due to strength of schedule. This is where you go.
And Cleveland's just so unlikable. I just don't want to lose to this football team. I don't want to lose to this quarterback, and that would just be extremely disappointing. And again, this is, it seems negative in tone, but I'm not saying I'm expecting this. If they do that, though, the season could, there's a lot of pressure on this game because if that is the result of Sunday's game, it could really turn the season into something different than we expected. So this is a really important game to stay above 500, beat a football team that has no business winning on Sunday, and show that you can still be the complete football team that we saw the first half of last year and in 2022. It's a very important game, but also an important 4-game stretch, as Gino alluded to. We'll get into some schedule talk coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. This episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the exact same page where you place your bets. Hopefully you're betting with Gino and I, LOE3 every Friday, 3 player props that we ride with. This week's going to be for Eagles-Browns. Probably going to take the over, I think. Maybe a parlay of Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown receiving yards. Let's get back to the deep ball through the air against Cleveland. You'll get started betting anything on FanDuel with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed. All you got to do is place one $5 bet. That's it. One $5 bet on FanDuel to get $200 back in bonus bets through FanDuel.com. Locked On Eagles is also brought to you by Hillsdale College. Time is the most precious commodity, so you don't want to waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? History, economics, the great works of literature, the meaning of the U.S. Constitution. Did you study these things in school? Probably not. Or even if you did, maybe it's time for a refresher. Time and technology have changed a lot of things, but they have not changed basic fundamental truths about the world and our place in it. There are a lot of courses you can take through Hillsdale. They're offering more than 40 free online courses like Constitution 101, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, all that and more. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced, so you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with reading quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's right, it's free. hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register today. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day, getting you ready for Eagles-Browns this Sunday at Lincoln Financial Field. Finally, another home game. That's super important, Gino. And as you mentioned, this is a really important 4-game stretch. Not just this game, as I said, is almost a must-win against Cleveland. But you look at your next 4 after the bye week at 2-2. It's gut check time. At home against the Browns. Then you don't have to go far. You've got to go to MetLife to play the Giants at 2-3. Got a weird yet big win against Seattle. Then you're on the road to the Cincinnati Bengals, home against the Jacksonville Jaguars. 3 of those 4 teams, I'd say, have a lot of talent on the roster, and 3 of the 4 people would probably have expected to be playoff contenders this year, and they're definitely underperforming. But that is the fact of the matter of those teams right now, Gino. They are severely underperforming. And so you have an opportunity now. If you can get to 3-1, get to a 5-3 record through this next month, I really think that's just so crucial. This 4-game stretch, considering the state of this football team, it is really important to try to get on a run here and not just be this Jekyll and Hyde up and down 4-4, 3-5 football team. Because even though that won't statistically say you're dead in the water, it'll feel like you're dead in the water if you don't come out of this. I would say 2-2, I guess, but you got to get to 3-1 in this next month.
Especially because the third quarter of the season is going to be exceptionally harder.
And
than
Washington's
the
winning
quarter.
games, Gino, and so is Dallas. So you got to keep up at this point.
You're not the front runners in the NFC East at this current point in time. These next couple games, I think, are very pivotal in a sense that all of these teams, in a similar sense to you, are playing maybe for their season over these next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
If you look at Cleveland Browns right now, they have to keep up pace in the AFC North with Baltimore. Pittsburgh is still hanging around there. Cleveland is not guaranteed a wild card spot with the expectations that that team had coming into the season. Let's go to that Cleveland team that's in a very similar situation, Lou. You talk about Joe Burrow and that team. That's going to be a team that maybe they're sitting at 2-4 or 2-5 and they're playing for their lives. You have to come out and be better in those situations, because when push comes to shove and you're playing a Doug Peterson team that he might be fired if the team doesn't get behind him and maybe they're ticked off, much like Tampa Bay was last week. If you don't come out there and play ticked off, knowing what the expectation is that these other teams are going to be ticked off, what are we doing here? Like, when are we going to get ready to go?
I was going to say, those teams are going to probably play desperate, Gino.
Yes.
You got to be ready to go.
When is this team going to get ready to go if it's not after 5 weeks into the season?
Yeah, I totally agree. And maybe it's not that things start to snowball and they collapse over this next month and Sirianni's fired and that extreme scenario plays out. But if you, even if you go 2-2 and even the wins don't feel great and you're sitting at 4-4 or you're sitting at 5-3, but it doesn't look great. I don't know. Again, I want a convincing stretch of football where it's not just one convincing game. Give me 3/4 of a stretch where it's like, they played some really steady, consistent football. And even if one got away in Cincinnati or, Doug steals one with Jacksonville to save their season, if you can come away 5-3, it's, again, how they're going to win these football games that really matters, Gino. Because, as you mentioned, these teams are fighting for their life. Maybe that'll be a good thing for the Eagles and they're all dead in the water. But I'm not so sure. It's still early on in the year where these players aren't going to, if this was the stretch at the end, it would feel better. But it's only October. These teams have a shot still. They're not going to just keel over and die on you.
And I want to shed some light on that Giants game in particular. If that game, you go in and you are just out-dueled in every facet, coaching, personnel, execution, that's got to be it. Because if you can't get up for a divisional game, there's no saving you at that point, man. That is, you've had it scheduled, you've had it circled. Saquon Barkley, he's going to be ready to go for that game. Yeah. Are you just going to go out there and play individualistic football, which it seems like this team has played over the last couple weeks? They have to play like a team. They just have to go out there and play better, sound, fundamental team football. And part of that is being ready to go. Just out of the gate, be ready to go. It has to start now. Green Bay, you thought it was a little bit of a spark, but that spark simmered out. Teams like Washington, like Minnesota, they're looking at behind them and saying, hey, San Fran's going to lose games and the Eagles are going to lose games. We're going to take advantage. We're all playing the same sport. This isn't, nobody's handed anything in this league, Lou. You have to play your schedule. And like you said, this team has to look convincing, because these are teams that, when you're playing the better teams like Baltimore and Dallas, if you put those half-hearted performances up, like you did against the Saints, like you did against Atlanta, maybe it'll get you by to 3-1 these next couple weeks, but Baltimore is going to punch you in the mouth. Look at what they did to the Buffalo Bills, a team that came in there unprepared, and they beat the brakes off of them. And that's really the level that it can get to. But the powder keg, it doesn't have to be a spark, Lou. They have to light the powder keg from the jump, like a Chauncey Gardner-Johnson pick in the first drive, or a big hit, or Jalen Hurts a deep touchdown to A.J. Brown, just something to incorporate juice into this team to show them that, hey, we know the talent, we know the expectations, and we're not going anywhere, because like you said, Lou, it's October and there's 17 games on the schedule and they've played 4.
I just want to
get it.
Gino, I just want to watch them play a game where I feel like they're in control the whole time. They're dictating the terms, and they're not just feeling like they're running around with their head caught on fire. And eventually they put the fire out and they win. I just want to feel like from the start, this team was like, yeah, we got this. Like, we got this team figured out.
What was that Jalen Hurts quote? He wants to be the thermostat in the room and set the temperature. Like, when's the last time they did that?
And I'm not
When's the last time they set the temperature?
Yeah, and Gino, I'm realistic. I watch the NFL right now and the chaos that this league is right now. This whole league is on fire. And you're not going to always have 2017 seasons, 2022 seasons where you win 10 straight and every single game's a cakewalk. Like, that's just not going to happen. But I don't think it's a lot to ask that some games each year, if you're a playoff contender, that you dominate or you're controlling and have a lead throughout the entire game. Like
2017, dude. That was the last time I was at the link. Was that Chicago game? They had the lead the entire time. They looked dominant. You got the Carson Wentz when Crevon LeBlanc blitzes off the edge and he does the little spinorama and gets out of it. Like, let's see a couple of those Heisman moments from the guys that are Heisman level players, man. Like, let's see that. Let's see a team that understands that Cleveland, they're the chum right now, man. Like, you got to be the shark in the water. Go be the apex predator for the first time in 2024.
Yeah. And I think, again, the first month of an NFL season, you're finding out who you are, especially nowadays. You're knocking off the rust from the summer. And I think the first month, again, you're figuring out who you are, and that can kind of give a team some leeway, a longer leash. But that's the other reason this 4-game stretch is so important. Gino, now, again, they've played 4 games. They've gotten healthy. They've had a bye week to assess everything. This month now is going to establish really who this football team is going forward. Most years, like 2017, 2022, when did they catch fire? Right around that second month, they go on that big win streak. Or 2018, 2019 shows you they are more of an up-and-down football team this year. 2012, they plummet. 2015, that's not a good football team. I think this second month of the year is really crucial. This is an important 4-game stretch.
If we look at that 2021 Raiders game, when this team looked dead in the water, and the way they responded that following week, I believe was against Detroit, if I'm not mistaken, Lou.
It was.
And they came out and dictated in Detroit's building that entire game. That's the type of performance you need.
That game felt like they listened to all the criticism. They knew exactly what to work on, and they solved it. They figured it out.
Yep. And they made all of us look stupid.
This is a litmus
like,
test.
Make us look stupid.
Yeah, I want to look like an idiot on Sunday that I overreacted
100%.
and was calling for everybody's head for a week and a half. I want
agreed.
people in my mentions on X screenshotting stuff. Like, yes, I want the receipts because that means the Eagles proved me wrong. I want to be proven wrong. I don't want to be right on Sunday after this game.
No.
I
100% agree, Lou. We want to be proven wrong and that this team was the team that we were talking them up to be for 6 calendar months, and that 1 4-game
I was going to say, we haven't been
the
skeptics of the 2024 Eagles for
It's been
months
4 weeks, dude, that we've been a little up and... 3!
Yeah.
Like 3 weeks of up and downness.
Less than a month ago, I said this is one of my favorite Eagles teams on paper, if not the best I've ever... Like, my favorite on paper ever.
That's another receipt you can get from Lou. He actually said that.
Believe it or not, I want them to win this game on Sunday, and I think they're going to against Cleveland. I think they're really going to control this one, and I hope they don't prove me wrong there. All right, let's get into some news to wrap up the show. Devin White released from the Eagles. Was this more about Howie Roseman, Vic Fangio? We'll get into it coming up next.
Can't finish up this show without talking about our friends over at Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you incredible deals on great seats so that you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I can guarantee you that, Lou, where did you get your ticket?
I literally just bought my Eagles-Brown tickets through Game Time like 2 hours ago. Great deal, by the way.
If you want to check out maybe a Phillies playoff game, maybe the Sixers are coming back, maybe the Flyers are coming back, or maybe you want to get down to Lincoln Financial Field to see the Eagles get back on track, you could do that at our favorite ticketing partner, and that is Game Time. As I said, Game Time Picks curates all the easiest savings on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. My wife, she loves musicals. As soon as Wicked comes to town next year, we're getting our tickets over at Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
All right, so the news of the day at the NovaCare Complex, the Eagles, I feel like finally is the right word for this one, finally released linebacker Devin White, Gino. A weird situation, I would say. Rashad Penny kind of 2.0 where
Frank Gore?
Yeah, or Frank Gore. I mean, at least Devin White put on an Eagles uniform, but kind of the same impact. Yeah, where it's a big-name veteran that's still in his prime. Howie Roseman gets a bargain 1-year contract, and you're like, maybe they can get something out of him, right? It's low risk, high reward. He gets first-team reps, Devin White, that is, at 26 years old, gets first-team reps all summer long, and then a week or two before the season loses his job to, and I'm not saying he didn't earn losing his job. And Nakobe Dean and Zach Bond didn't win these jobs. That's not what I'm saying at all. But it is strange that he kind of was the guy all summer and then he just wasn't. Then was a healthy scratch for multiple weeks and then is just gone. And I wonder, was Devin White just this terrible and it was a whiff on Howie Roseman's part, Gino? Or is it, hey, here's another defensive free agent that Vic Fangio is just not knowing how to use, and Howie and Vic just were not on the same page with him, and Bryce Huff and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's not really looking great in the system right now. And Cooper DeJean still, Vic keeps saying isn't ready to go. So is there a disconnect with the personnel department and the coaching staff again? I don't know if that's true, though, because then Zach Bond feels like a hand-picked guy from Fangio. So clearly how he communicates with them. And so it's just kind of a weird situation. Maybe White just sucked. I don't know. Maybe I'm just reading too much into it.
I think he showed us who he was.
And he doesn't play special teams, right? I mean,
no, he doesn't play special teams. He looked pretty bad in coverage in the preseason. That injury kind of sidelined him, and that was kind of it. And Zach Bond has been playing really well. Nakobe Dean is playing good enough at this current point in time.
And Trotter looks good in the summer, too.
It's another one in the long line of free agent acquisitions at the linebacker position that didn't work out. And I think the one thing that kind of was maybe the biggest, hey, this isn't going to work, because Todd Bowles is a guy who can do a pretty good job of getting guys like Baker Mayfield or these projects where you have to recoup a player and get them ready to go. So if he gives up on Devin White,
and that's also a blitz-heavy defense, right?
Which was supposed to be his specialty. Exactly. Yeah. So should we have seen this coming? Probably. I think the linebackers ahead of him definitely showed more, and not playing special teams, not even being willing. James Bradbury, he's at least willing to try something else to make it work. But
yeah, I think
I wouldn't get too lost in the sauce with this move. I think it was a matter of if, not when, or when, not if, with this move. And nothing bad to say about it. Hopefully he signs on somewhere and maybe does succeed. But you have Jeremiah Trotter Jr. in the wings. They have Oren Burks, who look much better in the preseason than a guy like Devin White did. Ben Mansumarin, he's not going anywhere. He might be a full-time fullback before you know it, or a two-way defensive offensive player. We might have our very own Travis Hunter in BVS, but I need to see more out of the linebackers too, man.
I was going to say, though, that's one thing is Devin White.
This unit is not anything to write home about either.
Devin White, I saw it was Zach Berman tweet out the Eagles felt good enough about their linebacker group right now in depth to let White go. And while I'm not saying they should have kept Devin White, and I'm not saying that he was actually good in camp and there's some conspiracy about why Vic Fangio just got rid of him, that's not what I'm alluding to. But I will say Nakobe Dean has been up and down. He had, 5 missed tackles on Sunday. His coverage has not been great this year. He's had his moments for sure. And Zach Bond's been a really good signing. But I do wonder, it's I would have liked to see Devin White maybe just held on to for a little bit longer, just to see if Nakobe keeps his up and down play. Maybe White can do more in a rotational role, because I don't know. It just feels weird that if Devin White was so bad all summer, why wasn't Dean? Maybe he was in the reporting. I just didn't see it. It just wasn't in line with what we were seeing on Twitter. We weren't at practice, but it felt like Devin White was the guy until August, and everybody else was rotating through. So if he was so terrible all summer, why was that the case? Or maybe I'm wrong on that. But I don't know, Gino. My nuts, that's what the vibe felt like from reports.
I mean, and he had that one little sit down where he said he was in a group text with AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts as the
he
leadership
sounded
council.
Super pumped up about the situation. He was hyping up Howie on a podcast, and then it just changed really quick.
egos can get in the way.
Yeah.
Your side, maybe it was Howie's ego, maybe it was Vic's ego, maybe it was Devin White's ego.
It was probably Devin's with
Something to
special
do with
teams
that.
again.
Yeah, it's tough to be a Super Bowl champ and then be like, hey, you're just going to be
I'm
a
sure. And he's a
special
top
teamer.
5 pick. I can't imagine he loved. And again, he was getting starter treatment. Like, he probably thought he was in line for a starting job, and then it was pulled from him. So I don't think it's a bad thing, again, that you're...
I don't know about pulled. Like, you can lose your job to injury.
That's probably the wrong word.
That's
true.
The biggest lie ever, that you can't lose your job due to an injury. It happens all the time, and I think that's what exactly happened.
And I'm not going to say that it wasn't like a good scenario that played out. You wanted Nakobe Dean to earn a job. You've invested a lot in Nakobe. You spent a 3rd-round pick on him. You let 2 starters that were good on a Super Bowl team walk because of your belief in Nakobe Dean. Zach Bond was a free agent you signed as well. So if he looks good, hey, that's a hit. Like, it's a good thing that Dean and Bond earned those jobs. I am just a little concerned. Like, is this going to last with those two? I'm not sure.
You got Trot. That's like, you're going to see if he's the future or not, one way or another. I think that made them
feel comfortable too. Is they know
I also think they
like
Ben Van Sumeren a lot more than people
I agree.
really know. I think he's a player who showed his next step in coverage in the preseason, and they think they can use him in spots, and he's a really good special teamer. I don't think he's going anywhere. It's one of those positions in Philadelphia that, have they shown loyalty to anybody here? Like,
no.
you got to see the writings on the... It's one of those things in Philly where if you're a linebacker, you sign here, it might be a one-and-done type of thing, man. Like, even
Howie's
Kaiser
track
White.
record of this position, man, it's just so bad. It's so... Maybe...
It's the Simpsons meme when the grandpa walks in, hangs up his hat, and then walks right out. Like, that's exactly what it is. And
again, Howie is so hell-bent on not investing in this position. But this strategy, like, again, on paper, you'd say, yeah, this should work. And it could work at a lot of other positions like running back, too. And it's worked for Howie at other positions like running back. Even you could say it's safety at times. But this strategy really has never worked for him at linebacker. And maybe he just doesn't care. But the 1-year cheap deal for a veteran you bring in has only worked with Kazir White. So maybe just once, like kind of we were talking about a corner this past offseason, maybe this is the year you just say, screw it. Just for 1 year, I'm going to take that first round great coverage linebacker and just go for it. Because this strategy, just it always whiffs.
Beyond reactive is how they take this linebacker position and work. And
again, that's fine the majority of the time, but maybe just one time, let's get
We spoke it into existence with cornerback. We got Q. We got DeJean. Maybe it is draft linebacker for March. 2025.
We
can't be talking about the draft. We did that for 6 months. We got Cleveland to focus on.
For sure. But yeah, hopefully Nakobe Dean can bounce back from that game against Tampa. And Zach Bond's been a hit so far. So I don't think they're screwed without Devin White. Just a kind of a surprising way, I guess, it played out from August to now, for sure. All right, we'll continue to get you ready for Eagles-Browns all week long. Got a show for you Wednesday, crossover Thursday with Locked On Browns. Friday podcast for you as well. We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. Thanks so much for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.